Welcome to the fourth day of Mediamorphosis, Contemporary Perspectives from Media Industry and Academia, the 8-day online lecture series by University School of Mass Communication, USMC, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, New Delhi. As we all know, media has many forms, domains, and manifestations. Through these lectures, we're trying to explore transformations in some of these forms and specialized areas. Change is inevitable, but due to the pandemic, the change has been hastened. The change is more aggressive, and this change needs to be reflected upon. Every day, we're bringing to you an aspect of mediamorphosis in a specific media type or domain to underline the nature and scope of transformations in communication environment after the outbreak. From broadcast journalism to community radio, from social media to sports media, we're exploring interesting and popular formats in the media world. Sports, arguably the most loved recreation amongst all sections of society. While in India, sports consumption While in India, sports consumption of cricket may be huge, but soccer, there's some problem with my screen. Let me just fix it. Yeah. While in India, sports consumption of cricket may be huge, but soccer, rugby, tennis, badminton, too are being consumed at a fast pace today. In fact, 2020 was the year of Olympics. Tokyo was ready. IPL 2 was ready to make more news. And it's noteworthy to understand that sports media world, as the digital sports landscape expands sharply post the outbreak, needs to be understood better. Is mobile screen the future of sports consumption of India? Or will television broadcast continue to grab audiences? And more importantly, what happens to sports news? Will sports journalism change its grammar post COVID-19? Is the digital playground a new playground for the sports fans? Questions we need to think and deliberate upon. We know that sports journalists deal with the coverage of sports events, personalities, the game, and of course news beyond the game as well. Sports papers are the most read in the newspaper. Sports programs on television yield high viewership, making the sports journalists constantly strive to hone their skills and provide impactful coverage. Today, we are delighted to have Mr. G. Rajaraman. Mr. G. Rajaraman needs no introduction. He's been a sports communicator for nearly 4 decades now. A veteran journalist, he's multimodal and polymorphic. Mr. Rajaraman is a sports communication professional with 37 years of experience on diverse platforms like newspapers, wire service, magazines, website and mobile applications, news television channels, and radio. After completing a course from the International Coaching Federation in 2015, he's now an accredited coach as well, helping people discover and actualize their potential. He served in various leadership roles in various publications as well as channels. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of Horizon Sports. He's mentored editorial teams at GoCricket.com, CricketBuzz.com, and Times Internet Limited. He's held leadership roles in the Pioneer, Hindustan Times, CricketNext.com, ESPNStar.com, Samay, IPL T20. Also, one amongst the organizing committee of the Commonwealth Games 2010 from 2009 to 2011. He's also part of the Delhi Daredevils. Some of his key assignments include covering the Olympic Games in Atlanta in the year 1996 and the Asian Games in Bangkok in 1998. He's also covered 5 cricket World Cups in the year 87, 96, 99, 2011, and 2015 in Australia, along with the ICC World T20 in South Africa, which is, a rare feat. He's amongst a few Indians who have covered the inaugural ICC World Cup T20. The other milestones of Mr. G. Rajaraman include a book on match fixing, The Enemy, in the year 2001. He's also consulting with various training agencies to hold reverse flick workshops with eminent spokespersons, corporate workshops on leadership and management, and he's also mentored many youngsters in sports communication, and he's coached spokespersons as well. I welcome Mr. G. Rajaraman to Mediamorphosis. Thank you so much, sir, for agreeing to deliver a session on how digital media is affecting sports journalism in the contemporary media scape, especially after the outbreak of the virus. Thank you so much, sir. I'll be passing on the session to you now.
It's quite funny, isn't it, that people say Rajaraman needs no introduction and Dr. Trehan has to go on and list out some of my best moments in life. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Trehan. As you were listing that out, I was reliving the past and then I had to snap into the present. I had to come back into what we are going to do today. It's quite amazing that COVID-19 has presented all of us different kinds of challenges. Each one of us has got a new challenge. All of us are in the same boat, and what a large boat it is. We don't know what the future holds, but we have to be ready for any eventuality. We don't know what it is, but we have got to be ready. So this is the situation that the sports media is facing as well. What I'm going to do today is to try and take you through where we are as a sports fraternity, and this is going to be my attempt to try and take you through my perception of where sports media is, and to see if we can evolve with the challenges that we are facing and how we're going to do it. Uh, but always, sports is about storytelling, isn't it? Sport is about the power of keeping everyone together. Sport is about feeling emotions that athletes do. Sport is about feeling the highs and lows of athletes and then telling the story to readers or to viewers. And there's nothing better in life than sport. But for 3 months now, we've all been stuck with seemingly no stories to tell. Let's look at what the scenario is like at the moment. As I said, everyone has been impacted. Every single individual, rich, poor, famous, infamous, everybody, you and I, all have been impacted. But how have I been impacted? I'm a freelance writer and I depend a great deal on writing about sport. With no sports competitions from March, it has been tough. Everybody tunes into Star Sports or Sony or the N number of channels that they're all hosting to look for live sport. We're not finding it. Of course, there was some German football that we saw, and then we turned our faces because it doesn't look like football. It doesn't look like a match at all. The Bundesliga I'm talking about, because the players were distant. When a goal was scored, the celebrations were very muted. It seemed very strange to us. But with no sports competition, television has had a big struggle. There have been no revenues coming in for them because they are not shown live. And live is one of the biggest revenue earners, as you and I would perceive. If you don't have live sport on television, their revenues are dipping and they're bleeding. All of them are bleeding. They might not tell you in so many words, but every sports television company around the world is looking forward to the revival of sport, the resumption of sport. Sooner than later, they are all hoping that sport will be back and that they can go back to earning their moolah and bringing joy to countless homes around the world. With no sports happening, our news channels, as it is, they were not covering sport seriously. They would cover controversy for sure. They might cover a little bit of IPL, but they would not cover national championships or national games or even the Khelo India school games. They would not bother too much about sport, but even that has come down to a bare minimum because there is no sport, there is no sport news. I have friends who are sports broadcasters working with various TV channels. They are now presenting news. They can't be presenting sport. They can't be reporting on sport because it's not happening. So they've all, to keep their job, they've all become news presenters. Some are doing late night sessions, some are doing morning sessions. So the catharsis is happening. There is an evolution, there is a churning that's happening in the sports TV industry, not just the ones that show live sport, but also those who show sport on television, the news channel. Look at websites like firstpost.com or the Queen or any of the other, the Wire, for example, hardly ever covered sport. but they're all struggling because there is no content that they can post on the digital space. So to even think about the impact, as the subject says, the impact of digital media on sport journalism. Now, with no sport happening, there can be so little impact on traditional sport journalism as we see it. You look at the Indian Express of yesterday, it's got half a page. Every newspaper that used to have at least a couple of pages, if not more, has reduced it to this size. The Express is not alone. I have known newspapers not to carry any sport news at all. The Hindustan Times did that for a short while until some protesters went and made it clear to the publishers that they need to bring sport back. But to see two articles in a newspaper, that pains the heart. We are so conditioned to seeing terrific coverage from around the world, not just India, from around the world. And so I think everybody knows that the space in the newspapers are shrunk, ad revenue has gone, therefore they've reduced the number of pages, and sport has taken a big hit. With no live sport happening, it is very difficult for journalists to try and find stories, or so we thought. Let us see what happens next. But before we look at the current scenario little bit more in depth, let me take you through my own journey as a journalist. I started in 1983 on the desk in the Hindu, and these were typewriter days. We did not know what a laptop was. We did not even get to see desktop computers till it was quite late. They did come on in the mid 80s. The pages would be made on computer, but the journalists did not have access to that. We would still have to work on typewriters, use old-fashioned pen and paper corrections to make, and then send it across to the composing team that would have computers. So they were the elite. The people who were composing news behind the scene were the elite, and so that is how I started life, with a typewriter and using a pen and paper, old-fashioned. Then television came in. I think it was the early 90s, thanks to cable and satellite revolution, you got to see a lot of news channels come. Also, there was churning in Indian cricket. BCCI fought its war with Doordarshan, won a battle in the Supreme Court, and was able to sell rights for the first time. Till 93, the cricket board was paying Doordarshan to show matches. But from 93 onwards, it has started making money, and now we don't even know how many zeros are there in the billions of dollars that BCCI makes from television rights. So broadcasting came into play a very big role in the 90s. We got to see European football at its best. When I was growing up, and I'm talking, television is come in. Color television came into India in the year 1982, thanks to the Asian Games. Now, from 82 to let's say 93, when you had only Doordarshan, you would get to see World Cup football once in 4 years. You would get to see a handful of matches from the European Championship. You might get to see an FA Cup final. You were lucky if you got to see an EPL match. This is what sport broadcasting was. Very early on, Doordarshan would show Formula One races, not too many golf events. You would get to see four Grand Slam tennis tournaments every year. You never got to see week on week on week of tennis or week on week on week of golf. That came in when cable and satellite television came in. Of course, it made WWF, as it was called then, WWE, as it is called now. Some of you have grown up watching WWF and WWE. That also became very popular in the country. A lot of young journalists are so hooked on to world wrestling, uh, which is basically nicely choreographed wrestling. You got to see that in the early 90s and 2000s. It has become very popular even today. But sport broadcasting came into being, sport broadcasting as we know it now, came into being in around the early 90s, and then it has grown to be the very powerful beast that it is. It drives content in all other forms of media. What you get to see on television is what is sold to you in newspapers, is what is sold to you on digital media, and is what is sold to you in every other form of broadcast or webcast, wherever else. What is on television is the biggest draw for everybody. Since we watch, this is an example I give people. You go to Khan Market in Delhi, sit there in a coffee shop for a while. You're most likely going to see a boy wearing a Ronaldo or a Messi shirt. You might not see a Sunil Chetri shirt at all. You may once in a blue moon get to see a Virat Kohli shirt. But European football has become popular thanks to broadcasting. They bring the best players home every single day. Of course, it's not happened in the past 3 months, but all the big names in world football are playing in Europe, and we get to see them. This is what redefined journalism. Let's say in the mid 90s or early 2000s, changed how we looked at journalism. Newspapers stopped covering local sport. National championships lost importance, and therefore uh, the young journalists took a lot of interest in what was happening in Europe. A lot of them would be able to name how well Tiger Woods played in a particular tournament, a golf tournament. They would talk about Michael Schumacher with passion, but they would not show the same kind of passion for Narayan Karthik. There was a degeneration that happened. Of course, people will think that it is a jump up that you're able to speak about European players and South American players and American basketball ballers with a lot of authority. But somewhere down the line, Indian sport suffered because our interest shifted towards the West. Now, currently, digital is what is driving. Digital is what is driving a lot of talent, a lot of what journalism is doing, because you're able to communicate instantly. And I'm not speaking just of traditional forms of media. A lot of people who are watching a cricket match, for example, are tweeting. A lot of people who are watching a cricket match or a football match are broadcasting on Facebook. A lot of people are using other forms of Instagram has become very popular, and of course the Chinese app that everyone knows as TikTok. A lot of people are using it to shoot selfies at sports events and broadcast. You get to know what's happening. You get to know a fan's emotion as well. The fan connect is very strong, and some of them can be very, very impactful. So each of these generations, whether it is old-fashioned print that I started in 1983, or the website that I moved to in the year 2000, or the television channel that came along, uh, you got to see that every age, every change that happened came along with challenges. And we shall discuss some of those challenges in the present scenario. Um, these are the most popular content creating platform that we are. Of course, there are many more, but Instagram, Facebook, Zoom meetings now, because people can't meet face to face. They have WebEx seminars as we are sitting right now. YouTube Live, all these are being used by people to generate content. Athletes are using this platform to reach out to their fans. Coaches are using this. Federations are using Zoom meetings to enhance the knowledge and awareness of their own officials, of technical officials, of coaches. So technology has been embraced. The digital has brought in a lot of change. Even old people are using a lot of digital technology. Look at what a television channel does. It moves from 24/7 television. They have not shut down shop. Beyond is an international channel from the Z Group. What you get to see is the sports editor Digvijay Singh Dev sitting at home and having a conversation with Vijender Singh, a boxer who won a medal in 2008, a bronze medal in 2008. This seems the new normal. You could sit at home and have conversations with people and then broadcast it on beyond broadband, as it's called. It might not have gone on the television channel, but broadband is what people are using as a digital form of expression. And Digvijay has been consistent with this. The other channels have not been so active with their sport. So Digvijay is working very hard to keep his job, as you can make out. He's interviewed Sebastian Coe like this over a Zoom conference or a Skype conference. They're using all forms of technology to ensure that sports content is kept alive. But Beyond is an exception. Let's look at a couple of other examples. Look at where digital is, when I'm speaking digital, I'm speaking about organizations like FirstPost.com, organizations like Quint. Uh, they are also dependent on the newspaper. You get to you look at a channel You look at a website called Olympic Channel, which is owned by the International Olympic Committee. A number of its stories quote newspaper articles. Because if somebody is talking to a Duti Chand, for example, a Times of India is talking to a Duti Chand, then the digital medium is using a lot of what has appeared in Times of India with just a minor credit somewhere, with a passing mention of Times of India, and they are recycling content. I think this is this kind of, if I can use the word, incestual relationship between traditional media and the modern media, because they're both producing some content and they're sharing it by giving some kind of credit. One of the reasons for this is a lot of journalists do not have direct access to a lot of athletes. The young athlete is reaching out to the fans directly. He's got his Facebook, he's got his YouTube, he's got his Instagram profile, and is reaching out to fans. They've got millions of followers. Uh, Time was when traditional newspapers were a way of reaching out to the fans. They don't need them anymore. I think it was in the year 2007 when I was at the ICC World T20 South Africa. I remember Mahendra Singh Dhoni telling the journalists that Rohit Sharma doesn't need the journalists anymore. You're going to need Rohit Sharma. And Rohit had just begun his international career. He'd become man of the match in a game. He'd come to do a press conference, and Dhoni told us journalists, and it was his first series, first big series as captain. He's a visionary. You can take objection to what he said, but I would like to look at the positive. He knew then in the year 2008, and we had just been introduced to Facebook. He knew then in 2008 that the relationship between players and the journalists would not be the same as it was in the past. They were mutually dependent on each other to tell stories. For an athlete's story to reach out to the world, you needed a journalist. A journalist also needed an athlete so that he could tell a very good story. But not anymore, because Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all of these have broken down barriers, and they have been able to go and meet the athlete, meet the fans directly. And the problem with a lot of us is that we're not innovating. We are stuck in a time bomb. We are not so clued into what the audience want. We are not so clued into, we we are sitting in our ivory towers and then giving content to people, assuming that this is what will sell. There has been very little attempt to reach out to the fan, to reach out to the newspaper reader, to reach out to the reader of the to the visitors of website, or to people who watch sport on television, and ask them what is it that they want. There has been no research. A lot of us believe that because the TRPs are toward European football, everyone loves European football. I know a lot of people who love Indian athletics, a lot of fans who love kabaddi, for example. They want more content on kabaddi. But because there is no direct access that a journalist has got to a player, a modern player, it becomes very difficult for them to produce that kind of content that the fans would want. Uh, where are newspapers struggling? Newspapers are struggling in the current COVID time because, one, they don't have enough sources. If you're going to be reading other website reports and writing analytical pieces, you're struggling today. Technology is a challenge. Again, if you have not kept pace with how people are using their WhatsApp, for example, to conduct interviews. And then deadlines have got sharper because newspapers have to be delivered in time. Uh, I know, for example, Mail Today, people were sitting at home and producing the newspaper. So instead of a 10:30 p.m. deadline, it was a 6:30 p.m. deadline because they had to bring together a lot of people. And sports departments have seen layoffs happening, like in other sections of the newspaper. There has been a bit of churning that's happening in the media industry. And this is thanks or no thanks to COVID. Hopefully, things will get better soon and people will start filing their wonderful dispatches soon. Let me share an example of the relationship between digital and contemporary media and even traditional media. Everybody would have seen this. Any cricket fan would have seen the coming together of Sunil Gavaskar, who's on your right, uh, bearded wonder he's become, and Ramiz Raja on the left of my screen. Your screen, you will probably see the same thing. Uh, this was an interview that Ramiz Raja conducted with Sunil Gavaskar sometime in April. Wonderful time, great interview. The bonhomie between the two of them was excellent. There was something new for us to glean. Typically, what would happen is Ramiz Raja would do his interview and be done with it. But because this is COVID time, because there is a shortage of event, this became a news point. Sunil Gavaskar talking to Ramiz Raja became a news point. Let's see how it morphed at this point of time. This is from First Post. They have a channel called firstcricket.com. This is from First Post. You can see how they have used the Ramiz Raja conversation with Sunil Gavaskar, where he says there is a more chance of snowfall in Lahore than of India playing Pakistan. This is what Gavaskar said to Ramiz Raja. It became a talking point. It has appeared in First Cricket. On the right hand side, you get to see an image from Hindustan Times, which also used the same interview that Ramiz Raja had with Sunil Gavaskar to talk about his toughest tests in the career. So there is that one half an hour interview that Ramiz Raja did. It has fed content in a digital medium. It has fed content for an old fashioned newspaper website. I'm sure it appeared in the newspaper as well. How Ramiz Raja created content for digital and for newspapers. This was on YouTube. Now he's doing it for himself and for his fans, but a lot of us have picked up content from there and have actually used a lot of content there. Every single newspaper, every single website had a story from Ramiz Raja's interview with Sunil Gavaskar. So where are we now? When we are talking about changing time, we are talking about the challenges that come through. You look at how, because there is no sport, there is no hardcore reporting happening. We are also used to waking up every day, looking forward to writing on some sporting event or the other. It could be a test match, it could be an IPL game, it could be writing about athletes preparing or qualifying for the Olympic Games, it could be the Kabaddi League that's happening, it could be anything. But we would look forward to spending a day watching sport and writing about it. But with no sport happening, obviously there's no sports reporting too. There have been a few digital press conferences that have happened, like we are doing right now. Instead of sitting in an auditorium and having a conversation where I can look into your eyes and sense your response, I can get feedback from you when I'm having a conversation instead of having a one-way conversation at this point of time, a monologue at this point of time. Instead of an auditorium, we have been huddled into press conferences on Zoom. Um, we have been able to ask questions, we have been able to get a few answers, but this is what has happened. COVID has driven us to huddle together in technology and use the best of technology to try and get some information so that we can post it on public domain. Even the interviews have been on digital formats. As you can see on the right, for example, W.V. Raman having a conversation with Vijay Lopalli, who recently retired from the Hindu and Sports Star. This is something else that has happened. Um, Players are hosting chats now. Yuvraj Singh will have conversation with Harbhajan Singh, and that becomes big news for some people. Yuvraj and Harbhajan, particularly, I'm reiterating their tweets in support of Shahid Afridi a couple of months ago brought in a lot of adverse reaction in India. And then when Shahid Afridi said something silly about Kashmir, both Yuvraj and Harbhajan had to go out in public and slam him. Um, that became a source of content. You know, Twitter and Instagram have become big sources of content. So it is no longer a primary source. We have started writing about how so and so is saying something on Twitter. Why even today, you got to see H.S. Pranay, one of India's leading badminton players, talk about how he was not nominated for the Arjuna Award by the Badminton Association of India. It was a tweet, and it has become a full-fledged article in several newspapers. So you're no longer dependent on primary sources, the access is gone. So you're dependent on secondary sources. Players talking to fans, that becomes a source of information. So either you master the secondary sources. At my age, I have to go and understand what a player is doing on Instagram or on Twitter to get a feel of what is happening in the real world, or you get left behind. That is the challenge for sport journalism. And also the fact that players and former players are hosting chats with fans, with media people, with among themselves. Uh, the risk is of the sport journalists become redundant. There was a time where cricketers would write columns in newspapers, I think in the 40s. Because there was no cricket journalist, Professor Devdar would cover matches. He used to play himself, then go back and write. You got to see many journalists like that play Test cricket. Jack Singleton is a name that comes to mind from Australia. He would play and then he would go on to uh, write his dispatches. We have gone back to those times now where players are reaching out to fans themselves and have started hosting chats. And like I said, the gap between the players and fans is virtually non-existent. Of course, the players um, do not have conversations with fans, but they can put out their point of view and then share a lot of what's happening within their own life with the fans. This is a picture that I shot at a hurdling event. So, what are the hurdles that we face today? It is not just because of COVID. It has been something that has been brewing for a long time now, and it has worried me. People would understand sport. If you went to write on cricket, you would write about what happened within the 75-yard circle that formed the boundary. You would write about great performances. You would write about uh, what really changed the flow of a game. You would write about turning point. You would write about the emotions that players showed on the field. But along came a generation which has started writing on sports people. Very different story. Um, let's take for example an archer, Deepika Kumari from Ranchi. For years, we have been writing of her as an auto rickshaw driver's daughter. Yes, she was an auto rickshaw driver's daughter. When she started off sport, her father was an auto rickshaw driver. But as she started making money, he didn't. I'm sure he didn't have to continue riding an auto rickshaw. But even now, we will talk about her as an auto rickshaw driver. We don't do enough homework. We like to sell pathos, we like to sell poverty, and these are stories that touch the heart. Um, an athlete who doesn't have a pair of shoes to run in the Olympic Games, Kulveen Trehan, in 2016, she would have money in the bank, but all she had to say was, I don't have a spare pair of bike. And then the whole country would lament how Dutee Chand was not being supported and how she didn't have a pair of shoes to run for the country. Now, spend a little bit of time researching and then you will find out the truth. But this is a beautiful story, isn't it? An athlete doesn't have a pair of shoes to run in the Olympic Games. Sound great, and people lap it up. People lapped up Hima Das, for example, last year. She won 6 or 7 races in a row. She had only Indians for competition in Europe. And then we made such a hoo-ha about it, some of us in the media, that Hima Das is the next big thing. Everyone else can go aside and Hima Das is going to deliver that Olympic gold for us. This was the impression that we created. Now, this happens because we don't understand our sport. Most of us journalists don't understand sport. We have stopped understanding the nuances of sport and we have started caring greater for the emotional side of sport and start writing about sports person. A lot of young people who are coming out of colleges uh, do have journalism training. If they are coming from journalism schools, they do have some journalism training. If they've done internships, they do have journalism training. But with websites like Sportskeeda and perhaps even The Bridge coming along, what has happened is they are dependent on crowdsourcing. They get a lot of content from all kinds of writers. Most of them are bloggers. They're not journalists. So this is something that has happened. Journalists have taken a beating because bloggers have outscored them. They're very strong with their opinion, sometimes low on fact, but blogging has challenged journalism. I think it is not just in COVID time. It has been there for a long time now. The challenge is for journalists is to understand that bloggers are competing with them. So the journalists need to reinvent and tell a story in a very different form so that people understand the nuances of sport as well. And there is a desperation to increase readership, whether it is on a website or whether it's in a newspaper, whether it's a viewership for a TV channel. The kind of sensationalism that we get to see, even within sport, is sometimes not a joke, and it does hurt. Then the challenge is to stay relevant to the time. I can't say that I used to cover sport like this, so I will not change. Then I get left behind. The challenge is to is to stay relevant to the current situation, to stay relevant to every evolving challenge that comes through, and to resist the temptation of recycling. It's very easy to read one newspaper and then recycle the story on my own website. No, I don't think I should do that. I think the challenge is for me to find out stories for myself, stories that I can tell people, stories that can resonate with them. I think that is the challenge that most journalists today face. Um, it is very tempting to say that it is because of COVID that we are facing these challenges, but that is not the truth. COVID has only enhanced the challenges, it has increased the challenges. Now, is it possible for us to overcome so many hurdles that are coming along the way? Of course, it is. Like this athlete on your left is clearing the hurdle effortlessly. I think it is doable. If we do good kind of research, I think 50% of our success is about getting the research right. 50% of our story, the basis of our story is in getting the research right. Also, it's very important to be aware of what's happening around us in the world. Once you know, once you're aware of what's happening in the world, once you're aware of the developments that are taking place, then you can produce relevant stories, stories that will resonate with every reader of yours. You just need to put the finger on the audience's pulse. Like I said, there has been no research, no attempt to find out what is it that fans want. There is no serious study. If you can even do a dipstick survey and find out what is it that fans love to read, you might be able to produce that story. Also, develop very good observation skills. Uh, look for trends in the world of sport and enhance your storytelling skills. And this is something I learned from my father. It's like you have to take the reader from the start to the finish, drag him from the start to finish of the story. To make a great beginning, ensure that the reader is with you, moves on to the second paragraph, ensure that the reader is with you, move on to the third paragraph, so on and so forth. Take him till the very end. Here is a little secret that I must share with you. When someone tells me I've done a good piece, I always ask that someone, what is the last line? It will tell me whether I've succeeded in taking that reader from the start to the finish or not. It is very important for you to have great storytelling skills, for you to be able to answer every single question that the reader or viewer might have. If you are able to answer those questions, you have done a very good job. How you do it? Each one of us has got a way of telling a story. There is no formula for that. You follow your heart and you tell the story the way you felt it. It will resonate with people. It will draw positive impact, and you will actually see people understanding what you're trying to do. I think no challenge is bigger. COVID has enhanced some of the challenges. It has made it. It has thrown a few thorns along the way, but no challenge is difficult. Now, how have I done? How have I faced some of these challenges? I don't want to sound like a megalomaniac, but because I have done these stories during the times of COVID, I'm able to tell you, I'm able to share with you what really has happened, or how I have done my research, how I've become aware of what's happening in the world of sport, and if I've been able to have a keen enough observation and then use my storytelling skills to grab the attention of the reader. This was sometime in April that I did the story on the athlete's mind. You would get to see that athletes are doing fitness exercises in their home or in the hostel room. It is expected of athletes to stay fit. Lockdown has happened, announced on March 24th night. From the 25th morning, we were not stepping out at all. So athletes were remaining confined in the house, in their own homes, or in the hostels in Patiala or Bangalore, and they could do their physical training. Now, what I tried to do the first instance was to understand what would happen to an athlete's mind, because the mind is used to doing a certain routine. You and I have faced it too, but the athletes have faced it more. They would wake up, go for training, come back, have breakfast, rest for a bit, go back for training, rest for a bit, and then go have dinner and rest enough for the night. There is a routine that has been built into the system for a number of years, from the junior years. Now that routine has stopped completely. you can't go out and train. Whether you're a cricketer or a football player or an athlete or a swimmer, you can't go out and train. Lockdown has kept you indoors. So, what is it that could happen to the human mind? This was a story I did after a conversation with 4 psychologists. I tried to understand what could happen to the human mind when there is a full stop that is coming. It's not a comma, it is a full stop that was put, and people had to stop training. So, how does the mind respond to that? That was a story I did, and I'm quite proud of the fact that I was the first of the block as far as the mental aspect of sport is concerned. I also spoke with this champion swimmer called Srihari Natras, who's on the right of your screen. Uh, One of India's best young swimmers, qualified for the Olympic Games with a B qualification mark. Uh, he told me that he was afraid of stepping into the pool if and when lockdown was lifted. This was sometime in April that he told me that he would think 5 times before he stepped into. So this was a story that had to be done because the athletes are afraid of stepping out. This was the time where there was a clamor for training to resume, for national camps to be reopened. So I got an interview with a player who admitted being afraid. Chavi is from Chandigarh. She is a fencer. Uh, and I asked her, "How are you killing time?" And she she sprang at me, of course, over the phone, and she said, "I'm not killing time. I don't have time to kill. I don't have a moment to waste." And she was doing training. She went off and did some charity work. She raised some fund with her painting, and she raised some funds for a blind institution nearby her home. So people were doing different things. But then this is not the story I was looking for. I asked her, what are the changes in sport that she envisages? She's a fencer and she's carrying a long sword. When I asked her, will you be afraid of the tip of your sword touching the other person's body suit and picking up a virus in case the other person got? So these are nuances of sport. And if you know the sport, you are able to ask the right question. And the athlete is able to answer you right as well. The other story I did a couple of days last week was about swimmers because athletics has resumed, hockey has resumed, boxing has resumed. You have got badminton back in action, weightlifters are back in action, but swimmers have been told that you have to wait till August. So I wrote about this before they were told to wait till August. I wrote about this piece where swimmers are afraid that they are being reduced to second-class citizens in the country as far as sports people are concerned because they were not allowed to train at all. Misconception that water can spread the disease, but chlorine in water will kill the virus. That's what some studies have said. People need to understand that these are athletes who have aspirations of representing the country, whose training, when it is disrupted, uh, they go back. For them to come back to their normal levels will take 3 months now. They have missed 3 months of training. For them to come back and start training again will take a long time. So did some conversations with swimmers and parents, young swimmers. I don't like to quote because I would rather speak with their parents if they are teenagers. I'd rather speak with the parents and understand the perspective. And then this piece came by. After that, I did this. There is a political story that you can always do. The Equestrian Federation of India and the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sport. And then talk about recognition to some federations and recognition not being given by the ministry to certain federations. That is a political kind of piece. If you keep your eyes and ears open, you can overcome the challenges and write these stories. And then, of course, I did a couple of YouTube shows with friends celebrating G.R. Vishwanath, somebody who played his best cricket in the 70s and early 80s, was a legend, is a legend. I grew up admiring Vishwanath. Not very many people know about Vishwanath. They don't celebrate him as much. So I got a couple of journalist friends, his brother-in-law, and a friend who has watched him play from 1964 to do a YouTube show called Celebrating Vishwanath. It is up on YouTube. You want to do something creative. You want to do something that is relevant. You want to do something that is accepted by people. Fortunately for me, we had a good live audience when we did Celebrating Vishwanath on Zoom. So it is about learning new medium. It's about embracing the changes that come along and then moving forward. Also, like I said, I spoke with Pranay a few days ago, and He spoke about the changes to the calendar that the World Federation had made. Now, these are trends. This is available to everybody, but nobody wants to write about these things. We are so happy writing about how an athlete is doing 150 push-ups at a time. They're meant to do that. They're meant to stay fit. But you want to know their thinking process. You want to know their thought. And Pranay was good enough to have a long conversation with me where he said that the World Federation trying to squeeze in 22 tournaments in the span of 4.5 months was a senseless thing indeed. And when athletes speak out like this, it is always good, not to whip up controversy, but to share information that the World Federation did not take the players into account, did not have conversations with the players when drawing up a plan like this. That is what needed to be highlighted. Also, I did this piece for the Quint, where I said that Indian sport have to be patient. You cannot start competition in a hurry because India, the COVID scenario is still peaking. I don't think they have peaked yet. And your athletes are your biggest national assets. You need to protect your assets. You need. I have lost substantial revenue because I'm not getting to write on sport. But that doesn't mean I should ask them to play every day, start competing. How can I be selfish? There will be people, there will be forces that will want them to play, forces that will want them to get back into competitive arenas. But I think India, you need to be careful. You need to be extremely careful. No amount of care is going to be enough to stop the players from getting the coronavirus. It's very important that we protect them because next year you've got the Olympic Games. There are lots of world championships coming along. It's very important. If you don't compete for a couple of months, no sweat, you can always be back. But you can be training in a protected environment. You can be training. That is what I wrote for the Queen. This is something that appeared this morning in the mail today, where I spoke to a young swimmer and her father who produced the video. The last order of the Ministry of Home Affairs that came out said that sport can be played, stadiums are open, sports complexes are open, where you can't have swimming and you can't go to a gym. At the same time, it said you could reopen places of worship, you could reopen malls, you could do a lot of public activity, but no to swimming. Now, somewhere down the line, the Ministry of Home Affairs had to be told that competitive swimming in a protected environment is very different to recreational swimming. You don't go to laze in a pool. The girl on your screen, Suvana Bhaskar, is one of India's best young talent, a fantastic backstroker. She's the second best in the country. Mana Patel is the best. She's the second best. What you need to understand is that if there are only 50 swimmers and if they're able to maintain social distance, reopen the pool for them so that they take their own protection. And if you want some of them to go out and compete in the Olympic Games, you need to be able to give them the kind of facilities that they deserve. What happens when your colleague, I played basketball many years ago when I was growing up, and my coach would say, come to the court by 3 o'clock. If some of us got in at 3:05, he would make us sit by the court side and watch our friends play for 2 hours. Nothing hurts you more than having to watch your friends play. You're not able to play yourself. And that is exactly what is happening with the swimmers today. They're watching their friends from athletics, hockey, and badminton, and all of the sport come back and play sport. But then they can go to a pool, they can see the water, but they cannot enter it. It is a bit of a challenge for the athletes. And if you can lend your shoulder to the wheel, if you can help the governments understand that competitive swimmers are a very different lot to recreational swimmers, then you have done something as a responsible journalist. I'm really happy I was able to do a story like this. Okay, I'm going to wind up. I will take questions, of course. I'm going to wind up with a few thoughts. We must never forget that sport is played in a society and it reflects the society that it is played. Not an original line. I remember reading C.L.R. Jain, a West Indian sociologist who wrote a fantastic book called Beyond the Boundary. It's about West Indies cricket, but it tells you some 50 years later is still relevant. Sport is played in a society and it reflects the society in which it is played. So if COVID dominates the society, if COVID makes us all afraid, makes us all be wary of shaking hands, of hugging people, sport also needs to take care of that. So there is no rush to play sport, no rush to play competitive sport, but you can go back to training if the environment is protected enough. I think as journalists or as journalism students, we need to stay in touch with that society. European football, we are not in touch with the society in which it is played. We are far removed from that society. But we are absorbing their sport, we are absorbing their heroes and making them our own. So my request to all of you young journalists is to pay more attention to what's happening around us, what is happening in our society, create champions, talk about them, talk about our local heroes so that our own sport can improve. The best thing to do is to accept changes. There will be changes, like I said, from typewriter to laptop to now the mobile phone. I have seen evolution. So if you don't embrace change, if you say I'm going to be with the typewriter because I've got used to putting paper in and typing my first word and going on to the last word, then I'm going to be redundant to society. So we have to accept the changes. There will be changes in society. There will be changes in the demand of journalists that are being placed by media houses. Accept those changes. Take up the challenges that come your way. But never forget to research. I think this is not change at all. If you do good research, high quality research, 50% of your success is assured. After that, you just have to observe and then to analyze and then share your story. But if you do good research, I will never be able to stress enough. When you sit down to write a story, ensure that you have done the best research possible so that your reader is convinced that you put in a lot of effort into understanding the depth of the subject. Once you have done that, believe in your preparation, back yourself up completely. There is no way you should allow somebody else to dominate your thought. You have done your homework. Don't follow the herd. Don't jump along with the herd and go with it. It is okay to be on your own. It is okay to swim against the tide. Because if you've done your research and you know you're right, you should not be afraid of being a lone ranger. You should not be afraid of going away from everybody else and telling your own story. I think it's very important that you tell a story in a manner that resonates with a lot more people than it would if you don't put in that effort. Some years ago, when I was with the Hindustan Times, I was told lower the level of your English, more people will be able to understand. I thought that if I use Shakespeare's language, I would make an impression on people. I was brought down to earth. About 15 years into the profession, I was told lower down the language, make it simpler so that more people understand. I've never received more valuable advice in my life. It tells me that you can tell a very powerful story in the simplest form. You don't need to complicate by using big words or fashionable terminology. Make it simple so more people can understand. Above all, back the truth. With sport and in life, back the truth and call things as they are. There should be no hesitation in calling things as they are, like I've done in the case of swimming the last couple of weeks. You need to be able to first convince yourself that what you're doing is right. Once you're convinced, go ahead the whole distance, fire on all cylinders, and ensure that your thoughts are out with the world. I'm sure you will have a great career in journalism. I'm now going to throw the floor open for questions. There you are. I will stop sharing the screen for the time being. I will take Ankush Agarwal's question first.
Uh,
Why are Indian shuttlers most vocal about
Hello.
the World Badminton Federation since the beginning of the lockdown? Is there self-interest at play? As we know, before sport, top Indian badminton players were in poor form, and it was nearly impossible
Hello.
for them to make it to the Olympic Games. How do you balance these stories when there is self-interest at play, but you also want to tell the athlete side? Damn good question that from Ankush Agarwal. I'm happy to take that on. I understand where you're coming from. I know that a lot of Indian athletes were on the downslide, um, but they were preparing for the Olympic Games. And when every athlete will have to spend time understanding their own body, understanding their own psychology, and then prepare for the Olympic Games. If the Olympics were scheduled for July, August, you needed to build up in such a way that you conserved your energy, you were able to manage your own resources in such a way that you are ready for the Olympic Games. We all know PV Sindhu, for example, is a big match player. She's done so well in World Championships every year, hasn't she? And she also won the silver medal in Rio 2016. she has been consistent in the big tournament. Now, if you start expecting them to show the same kind of intensity every time, then we are making a mistake. You don't want that intensity to burn players out. So I understand why some athletes were on the slide. So I will back them. Of course, I will criticize them for if they have played badly. If, why are they playing so many tournaments? Is the question that I've asked. But it becomes necessary for them to go and show up because they are contracted to the World Badminton Federation. The criticism of the schedule is valid. Therefore, the players will need backing. Ankush, one lesson that I've learned in life is not to judge individuals, but to judge issues. So if Sindhu is making a mistake of stopping practicing after she's won the world championship and goes out around the country collecting reward, then I'm critical of her because she needs to rest and recover. Instead of resting and recovering, if she's traveling around the country, she will get criticized. Someone like me will. What if she's saying that the scheduling is wrong? I will back her. It is not about Sindhu. It is not about the individual player. It is about the issues. I have learned to separate the individuals from the issues, and I will look at the issue and then decide whether a player needs backing for that particular issue or not. So that's about it. Chirag Chiller, again another very good question. What is the balance between being a sports fan and covering that favored team? Well, you can see me, Chirag, right? In the year 2000, India was bowled out for 54 in Sharjah. It was the last time India went to Sharjah to play a CBFS tournament. I think they played in Asia Cup later, but or they would have played against Pakistan sometime when Pakistan was unable to host India there. Now, these are the kind of occurrences where India might have gone to Sharjah. But in the year 2000, when India was bowled out for 54, I never imagined India would ever be bowled out for 54. I sat like this for half an hour. I had both my hands on the head, and for half an hour, I could not write a line because you're so emotionally impacted by what has happened. Then I told myself that look, you need to separate your emotions and at the same time write your emotions, talk about it to the fan because they are eager to know what your line of thinking is. If India has been bowled out for 54, what is it that Rajaraman is thinking? So they are keen to know that, and therefore you have to write that piece. You can't say I'm feeling bad, I'm going to not write, or I'm feeling great. Leander Pace winning the bronze medal in 1990. There was no time to celebrate. Okay, here is Leander Pace winning a bronze medal, and I had a very sharp deadline. I had 10 minutes in which to complete the article and send it back to the Pioneer so it would appear. I was one of the two Indian journalists. Leander won at about 2 o'clock in the morning Indian time. When he won, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning in India. And the next morning, at 6 o'clock or 6:30, when the paper was delivered, my newspaper Pioneer carried my report on the front page. So it does give you satisfaction. There's no time to pause and think, oh God, I want to be a fan. I want to celebrate with Leander Pace, want to go and pat him on the back. So as a professional, you learn to separate your emotions and you're able to draw some of them when you're writing an article. What is the difference between journalism and blogging? Vatsala Sevandi has asked this question. Again, a very good question. Journalism is what you do for a living. Blogging is what you do for a passion, what you do as a hobby. Journalism is something that you're doing for someone else. Blogging you're doing primarily for your own satisfaction. You're recording your thoughts. A blog is your personal diary. It's an extension of it's an online diary of yours where you're parking your thoughts so some of your friends can read it. But as a journalist, I have a responsibility to a reader who's paying for the service. So I hope in a very short, in a very brief manner, I've been able to distinguish blogging and journalism for you. Mansi Sahadev has got this question. Mansi, you've been a journalist yourself, and this is an interesting question coming from you. Has the impact of sports events increased or decreased due to digital media? For example, Hello India 24/7 live update about the event along with innovative stuff. And you pointed out in a couple of times that journalists don't have access to players. Why so? If not journalists, then who else? Good question. I'll answer your second question first. One of the stories I wanted to do during COVID was with a player who suffered from chicken pox 3 years ago. He could not play IPL because he had chicken pox. I thought deep down that here is a player who has isolated himself from the rest of the world. Because when you have chicken pox, you're not allowed to meet people. So you have gone away from the world of sport, recovered, and then stayed mentally tough to be able to come back and play for India and play well. So I sought out this young cricketer and I said, can you share what happened at that time? How did you deal with the crisis of having to stay away from sport and then coming back to play sport? The player knows me, I know the player, but the answer I got from the player was, will you speak to my agent? Right? So I stopped asking such players questions. I did go to the agent, I did ask the agent. The agent asked me, who do you write for? I said, I write for Mail Today and First Post. And the answer was, sir, we stopped doing interviews. If he had told me that they stopped doing interviews during COVID, I was very happy to take it. But because he found out I was writing for a paper called Mail Today or for a website which is not so popular as some other websites are, he said, "No, we will not pair him." The gap is something that players develop with the journalist. Also, you need to be on ground, Mansi. There was a time where I would travel a lot to be able to watch sport. But over a period of time, media houses stopped spending so much money on people traveling. I started when there were about 15 of us covering Test cricket overseas. And when I finished, there were about 150 people watching the World Cup in 2015. 150 Indian journalists were accredited. Now, players are not able to develop relationships with all 150 journalists. It's difficult. So there are lots of reasons why access is not so easy anymore. If you know the athlete's agent and if you know, or if you're writing for a large newspaper, you will definitely get some interviews. They seek you out. If you work for a large newspaper, they seek you out. If you don't work for a large newspaper or a TV channel, they prefer to keep away from you. It's difficult then to develop partnerships and relationships and associations with players. There was also a time where journalists would keep the secrets of players. 97, I remember it was a very difficult tour for the Indian cricket team in Sri Lanka. Very difficult because you're stuck in the same room for 35 days. No change of hotels, no change of room. It got boring after some time. So at about 1 o'clock, I finished work till at 11. Went in for dinner. I found a player at the dining hall, and he told me, "Sir, don't tell anyone that you saw me here at 1 o'clock." I told him, "You also don't tell anyone that you saw me at 1 o'clock, because people think that I'm a good boy. I go off to sleep at 10:30 or 11. Uh, so don't spoil my reputation." This is the kind of bonding that you had with players. No? You would share secrets, not write about it. Today, because the television channels are under pressure, you would go chasing Yuvraj Singh where he's buying maybe a packet of noodles in a food court in South Africa, and then that becomes a big story. Look at Yuvraj; he's having a Chinese noodles or whatever. Right? That is not journalism at all. That as I knew it, I would not do it myself. But because of this, players want to keep a distance with all journalists. So sometimes I understand the challenges that players have got. There are a lot of young athletes who are becoming very smart, who understand that you're not going to harm them, so they develop a good friendship with you. So it is possible for young people to to develop good relationships with athletes and then to start writing too. The first question was about live updates. Hello India is very popular, but it has not caught the fancy of the traditional media. It is shown on Star Sport. There is a lot of buzz that happens in social media, but it is not taken very seriously by either by newspapers, which do give it some coverage, but as a talent search platform, it is huge. I don't think newspapers have understood the importance of Hello India. It is very important that they go there and see young talent. See if you watch a Srihari Natraj, I saw him for the first time in the Hello India school games in Delhi 2018. He's become a friend because he's seen me at events. So it's important for you also to develop, cultivate relationships with players to win their faith. You need to be seen covering this. So 24/7 digital has not really impacted sport. Uh, the real impact comes from television channels which are showing sport live. They're conditioning how we are thinking. They're conditioning how journalists think. They're conditioning how fans think. So the real drivers of sport in this country are the 24/7 sports broadcasters who have their own interest. If they're going to show European football, everybody is going to watch European football. They will show kabaddi, you will watch kabaddi. So whatever is shown on television is what is accessed. Nobody has ever complained saying, I want to watch a national championship of basketball or I want to watch a national championship of volleyball. Unless people start demanding, you're not going to see that change coming in. What has happened is federations have started streaming their own events. I know the Athletics Federation invests a lot of money in doing live streams on Facebook and on YouTube, and there is some viewership for that. So that might be the new way forward. Manchester United has its own television channel, but at a very smaller level, the Athletics Federation has got its own YouTube channel and Facebook Live programming that draws attention because it is the way forward. You can't keep complaining that traditional newspapers have stopped covering their sport. They are reaching out to fans in their own way. That is just beautiful to see. Um, Dilhara Vikrama, what is the main difference between and the importance between general journalism and sport journalism? I think I will try. There's a lot of difference, but I will try and explain it in one line. Sport is where a reporter is allowed to have an opinion and portray it. So you could say it was a good shot or a bad shot. So you're sitting in judgment. Uh, Very few other reporters have got that liberty. You are both an analyst and an analyst. You're recording history as an ANNALIST analyst, and you are analyzing it for the reader. So there is a huge difference between sport journalism and general reporting. Sport allows you the liberty of having an opinion and sharing it with people. So Raja Manish, I'll get to your question. Is it possible to have good relationship with Pakistan in sport, especially in cricket away from politics? I don't think I need to say anything more than what Sunil Gavaskar just said. There is a greater chance of snowfall in Lahore than there is of cricket resuming immediately. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it is a political weapon now. We have seen it being used on and off by both countries. If General Ziaul Haq wanted to come and make a public relations point of view by visiting Jaipur for a test match, he would do it. If Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee wanted to extend a warm hand to Pakistan, he would then send the Indian cricket team to play there. So it is difficult. Unless the political scenario improves, I don't see bilateral series happening. Udita Raj, in times that we are living today, how should one apply to and develop specifically professionally on the sport field? I don't think the times have challenged us. It has been a challenge for some years now. The old fashioned way of reading up a lot, the old fashioned way of watching a lot of sport on ground. When you go to the ground, you have got 360 or 180-degree vision. On television, when you're watching sport on television, you're just watching a two-dimensional image. You don't get to experience the emotions. I'll give you an example. All of us will be able to relate to that example. This was the 1998 World Cup final, and I know you know already that I'm talking about Zidane. Zidane, probably the best player in the world at that point of time, was given the red card. World Cup final. This is the biggest tournament of his life. He's playing brilliantly, and he's shown the red card, and nobody knows why. Because 4 minutes earlier, he had headbutted Materazzi, an Italian player. Something had happened. There was an exchange between the two of them, and this was an off-the-ball incident. The ball is somewhere else, and Zidane headbutted Materazzi for having cursed him, and was shown the red card 4 minutes later. So when you are able to not see on a two-dimensional image, you will never be able to write. But if you're at the stadium and you're able to watch an off-the-ball incident, you will be able to write. If you're at a ground watching a club-level game and writing about it, you're improving your skills. So you need to go on the field. Go and watch under 17, under 19 sport. Go and watch national championships if it's happening in your vicinity. I think Dilhara, then Mudita, then what will happen is you will develop a taste for local sport. You will develop a taste for becoming professional in the beat of life. Ankush Agarwal says match reports are not relevant anymore because the access the current viewer has. The opinion pieces are dictating digital medium. How does one keep his or her personal biases away? Another good question from you, Ankush. Let's go back to buying sugarcane juice. We've all seen sugarcane juice being made. Between two drums, the sugarcane is inserted, and then the juice maker pulls it out. He turns it into 50% and sends it in. He folds it once and sends it in again. Rolls the drum, gets some juice out. Then he squeezes it, and then does it a third time, by which time not a drop of juice is left, and he dumps it in the waste paper basket. You got to pick it up and find that juice. That is what a newspaper journalist's job has become. There is live sport. What you're saying is very, very right. People are watching sport live on television. They are watching experts analyze the game. After the match, whether it's on the same sport channel or a news channel, experts are analyzing the game. So by the time you read my news report the next morning, should I my challenge then is to hold your attention. There are two things that you are looking for when you're reading a newspaper report. There are two things you're looking for. One is validation of your own thoughts. As a fan, I read newspapers to see whether somebody is thinking like me or not, whether what I've got is reflected in that article or not, whether the line of thinking is the same or not. There's only two ways of holding attention of a reader with a match report, and match reports are not relevant. People read match report is when you are telling a great story, or you are telling them a story in a great manner. One of the two things. Either it has to be a great story, or you have to tell the story in a great fashion. Here is an example from my own life. I covered a test match in Chennai. I think the year was 2004. And this was a beautiful game that featured Australia and India. A test match over 5 days. And the match was swinging back and forth. India and Australia were fighting very hard. 4 days of intense cricket. And it was fun to watch. You could feel the emotion from 100 yards away. You could feel the emotion of the play. And it was beautiful. A terrific contest. And at about 11 o'clock that night, Doordarshan had a show on the test match. I joined Digvijay Singh there, who was the anchor and host then. We did a show for about half an hour. At 11:30, I went off saying, India has got a great chance of winning the match because Sehwag has shown positive intent. Will be fun to go and watch the fifth day's play. 11:30 at night. Went off to sleep. Woke up in the morning. There was knee-deep water on the ground. There was a thunderstorm overnight, the dead of the night, and not a ball could be bowled that day. We could not even go to the ground. We could not go to chip off. So we had to stay back in our rooms. And the challenge was for me was to write my 800 word, 900 word report for ESPNstar.com. People want to read something, right? So there has been disappointment of play not happening. People want to read what you have got to say. So I scratched my head. Then I said, how am I going to tell this story now? I have not even gone to the ground, not seen a single player, not heard the match referee, not spoken to the umpires, not spoken to the ground staff. How can I write a story? Then it came to my mind that I should relate to what the reader would like to read. This is a match report of a match that had not taken place. So what I did was I said for 4 days I was reading a thriller, a beautiful book. And then when I came to the climax, somebody had ripped off the climax. Last day's play, I saw it as the climax. And in a book, somebody had torn off the pages and given it for me to read. When you are able to tell a reader that I felt so disappointed that I'm watching a movie and I can't see the climax of the movie because the reel has not reached the theater, they understand it so well. So when you're able to speak a language, when you're able to communicate a language that they want to read, there is room for match report. So match report will always be relevant, Ankush. They will never go out of fashion. Shivam Tyagi, good question there, I can see. How do we research in order to create more interest in less followed sport in India? How do we engage the audience that doesn't want to read anything beyond cricket and soccer? I think we make a fundamental mistake in assuming that audience doesn't want to read beyond cricket and soccer. I think we make assumptions that only cricket and soccer will sell. There are beautiful stories to be told and told in a beautiful manner. People will read it. I'm sure if I tell you the story of coming from back or beyond in Assam and becoming the nation's heartthrob for a while, or if I tell you the story of a Neeraj Chopra, javelin thrower from Haryana, who wanted to play cricket in his youth, in his younger day, became a javelin thrower, became a world junior champion, held a world record, and is now qualified for the Olympics. People are interested. People are interested in success stories. People are interested in hearing stories that have a positive impact on them. We need more champions. Sindhu, for example, or Saina Nehwal before her, Mary Kom. Any number of people have drawn attention with their exploit. We just need to tell the stories in a nice fashion. Obviously, you can't be living in past glory. You can't say that we won the World Cup in 1983, therefore we will talk about 1983 all the time. No, not doable at all. There are champions, you need to back them. There are young athletes, like I told you, Chavi Kohli from Chandigarh, a fencer, very young. She's also won the President's Award um, some years ago, not for sport, but for being a role model in society. And she's a teenager still, and she's won the President's Award. I think what is important is for us to find those stories and tell them to people. So you can't say that there is no readership for these stories. There is readership. You give more of this, people will want more of it because it will make them feel inspired. There is an aspirational value to this story. If you tell a story of a young athlete who's pursuing success by moving away from India and parking himself or herself overseas to move away from distraction, it's a beautiful story. People are interested in revolutionary thinking. People are interested in progressive thinking. When we are able to share that, and as learnings in life, there is readership. Research for that, Shivam, is very simple. Keep your eyes and ears open. Like I said, social media is a very good tool. First information from. After that, you just have to make effort, have long conversations with people who have played sport or who are coaching from the world of sport. I think you will then be able to find the right kind of balance between the research that you're looking for and the story that you want to tell. Joshua Almeida from Bombay. Thank you very much for being here today. I know you took in extra effort to be here, Joshua. With barely field sport news anywhere around, do you think the Airtel and OnePlus eSport tournament will make a major impact in the gaming industry in India? Esport is big already. It has got its own constituency, if I can use that word. Uh, it will grow bigger in time. Of course, every young person who plays sport, who plays esport, is potential audience. But we are still some distance away from it becoming a sport that can challenge some of the popular events, popular disciplines in the country. Sport, at the end of the day, Joshua, is about combat. It is about competition. It's about you're pitting your physical skills, your emotional skills against somebody else and coming on top. Yes, there is a lot of emotion involved, a lot of strategic thinking involved in esport, but I think Indians are still some distance away from it. Okay, Shika has got a very good question. How do you control emotion, and how do you stop being biased when writing on sports events? I have answered that till when I explained how it was difficult to write either the Leander Pace victory in 1996 or the 2000 Sharjah incident where India was bowled out for 54. It is possible because the mind is so powerful. It's a very powerful instrument, and if you can use it, if you can train it well, you are able to then sift it out. It is very easy uh, to be biased, but then you have a responsibility to the reader or to the viewer. So your biases are kept aside. You will criticize somebody for their actions. You can be emotional about certain decisions. You can write about them, communicate your emotions to the reader. This is what sport is all about. But at the same time, don't sit in judgment over individuals. Don't say somebody is a bad person or a good person. Somebody's action is bad, somebody's action is great. You could remain humble, that you could sometimes have done a mistake, but you can, but that doesn't make you commit mistakes all the time. So I think it is very important to remember that there will be emotions, there will be bias, but you have to keep them on the side and complete your work. Thank you, Shika. That was a beautiful question. Okay, Sneha Gupta has asked these questions. I will answer them. How can sports public relations aid in reviving sport journalism in current times? Good question. I have issues with that because both professions need to evolve. Both professions need to understand that they cannot use one another. I think most of the time, what sports PR companies are doing is they're selling a product. They're not sharing stories. They're selling a product, and so their client, which could be a player, comes to a press conference or talks to you and is not ready to answer a lot of questions. So, so the whole impact, the whole purpose of doing a public relations exercise is lost. So it gets very difficult then to understand what is it that the PR company wants, and if the PR company keeps insisting that you would only do a particular kind of story, if I do it, then I become a compliant. I become a compliant to them. I don't want to get into that scenario at all. Uh, Sports PR companies can definitely help by making available good advice to their athletes. I gave you the example of this young cricketer who had chicken pox and stayed away from sport, from cricket, could not play IPL one season. Now, a good PR company, a good agent would be able to advise the athlete what to say. Here is a chance that I'm giving him to build a beautiful profile of sharing his experience with the world, of isolation and of returning, of bouncing back. Lovely, lovely opportunity. What if the PR company says, "Oh, you write for Mail today, so I'm not going to give you this story"? That's not going to help at all. I think there is a need for PR companies to understand what is it that journalists want, and similarly for journalists also to understand the intent of the PR. If the intent is good, great. If the intent is not so good, if it is focused on a certain client, then it doesn't really help. Thank you very much, Dr. Kulveen Trehan and Sneha Gupta, for making this possible. Thank you very much to the Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. Not the first time I've been there, but this is a novel experience. I've never done anything digitally for them. Thank you very much, Dr. Trehan.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you for such an interactive session. Now I request Dr. Sarveshwar Tripathi, a senior faculty member, University School of Mass Communication, to please propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kulveen, Dr. Kulveen. So in today's lecture, we feel privileged to have rather veteran sports journalist as a speaker, and in this series, Mediamorphosis. The school really makes sense to contribute for rather, for inspiration for. We have not only elaborated the nuances about the nuances of a sports journalist for aspiring journalists were in our department also, and how to use technology to report sports. But specifically, you have told them the tips about how to cope with the sports reporting, the problems of sports reporting during this pandemic, and in general also the tips and the suggestions that you have extended. I think it is very useful for the coming generation, for the aspiring sports journalists. So very thank to you. The school and the Gobind Singh extends gratitude to you for your precious words. So thank you. And moreover, we are also very thankful to our entire team that is involved in this lecture series. We are also thankful to our audience. I think today have audience have joined our this lecture series, not only from India, but also from abroad, and mostly all the parts of India. So we are very thankful to them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tripathi. Thank you so much. We're winding up this session today. Thank you, one and all.